China has warned it stands ready to penalize U.S. companies and organizations in a tit-for-tat move that could escalate the spy balloon dispute. A spokesperson from China's foreign ministry says countermeasures will be taken against U.S. entities that undermine Chinese sovereignty. The spokesperson did not elaborate on whether any American companies had met that criteria. This after the U.S. slapped sanctions on 6 Chinese firms allegedly linked to China's surveillance balloon program. Beijing authorities have denied U.S. allegations that an unmanned high-altitude airship it shot out of the sky earlier this month was part of a larger network of Chinese surveillance balloons. Earlier, we spoke with Ian Bremmer, founder and president of Eurasia Group, who spoke to us from the World Government Summit in Dubai. He shared his insights with CNA's Shahida Othman on this latest point of friction between the U.S. and China, and that possible meeting this week between Antony Blinken and Wang Yi.
What does this latest saga mean for all of Biden and Xi's attempted détente?
Well, it is a big deal politically. It just isn't a big deal in terms of intelligence. And it's very important that we parse those two things out from each other. Remember, the U.S. government, the Biden administration, was well aware of the existence of this balloon. They knew what it was. They knew where it was about a day and a half before any of this became public. And at that point, Biden was still very much intending to send his Secretary of State to Beijing to meet with Xi Jinping as well as other officials. And that obviously means they had no intention of shooting it down. The reason for that is because this balloon program is meant to be a backup for existing Chinese satellite surveillance capabilities if, God forbid, in the incidence of a military confrontation between the U.S. and China, China no longer had access to their satellite capabilities, which means that there's no further intelligence damage being done, but they are ramping up this program as a backstop. But once it became public information, given that in the United States, the U.S.-China relationship is so politicized and both Democrats and Republicans are very hawkish in their orientation towards China, well, at that point, Biden had to react immediately. He had to shut down that trip and he had to shoot down that balloon. And that became, of course, a crisis. It was not a big crisis. It's a crisis both sides certainly are not trying to further escalate into, but it is a very relevant point, and it's good we're talking about it.
Now, we know that the top diplomats of both countries, Secretary Blinken and China's top diplomat Wang Yi, they'll be at a security conference in Munich later this week, and both sides are believed to be mulling a meeting at this point. Now, if that meeting happens, it will be their first face-to-face talk since the balloon row. What is at stake here, given that Mr. Wang is also expected to visit Russia during the trip?
Well, I mean, right now we have major military exercises going on between Russia, between China and South Africa. I mean, these are countries that continue to be very aligned in terms of ideological worldview, very aligned economically, and they're increasingly aligned from a security perspective. They're not allies of the Russians the way the Iranians are. The Chinese aren't breaking American sanctions, but they are not supporting U.S. policy on Russia. So clearly, the U.S. orientation towards China is one of strong strategic competition, one of concern of national security threat, but also one of massive economic interdependence. And those three realities all coexist at the same time. Biden has made very clear since his direct meeting with Xi Jinping in Bali at the G20 just a couple of months ago that he wanted to put a floor under the U.S.-China relationship. He doesn't want relations to continue to escalate. He doesn't want confrontation that will have the parameters of a Cold War between the two countries. Biden's been trying very hard to keep that from happening. And I think that if Blinken does meet with Wang Yi on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference, where I'm actually going as of tomorrow morning, then I think it will be more clear that both countries are trying to be constructive on an overall relationship, despite the fact that there are some very significant chippy areas of confrontation.